Hey everybody, welcome to The Bottom Line. I'm Michael Noland. Sadly, Denny Laine, Paul McCartney's Wingman, in every sense of the word, has passed away at the age of 79. Now, I call him Paul McCartney's Wingman, not necessarily because he was in the band Wings with Paul McCartney. No, it goes farther than that, folks. Denny Laine was the co-leader or deputy leader of that band in every sense of the word. But I called him Paul McCartney's Wingman. I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. One time, McCartney and Wings were at a pub, and a man approached Paul McCartney and said that he had a gun and that he was going to kill him. Now, at this time, Wings was still with Henry McCulloch. Henry McCulloch heard about this along with Denny Laine. Henry pulling out a knife from his boots. I love the guy. He was awesome. Denny Laine right there. They went up to the guy and took care of business. Anyway, McCartney's life, or at least his dignity, was saved. But you know, Denny was like that. He was a team player. As a matter of fact, I've called him Wings' not-so-secret weapon. Now, my longtime viewers will know that I've often called John Paul Jones Led Zeppelin's secret weapon. Every band has a secret weapon, or at least the great bands do, right? And Denny Laine was Wings' secret weapon. Want proof? How about their first big hit, Band on the Run? Denny Laine plays multiple instruments on that album because Wings members had quit at the last moment the second they heard that McCartney was heading off to Africa. That was too far, too much for them at that time. They didn't feel like they were being paid enough, and they had had enough. But Denny went right along, as he would right up until the end of Wings. Now, this freed McCartney to play drums, right? And some of the best drumming McCartney's ever done is on Band on the Run, and other instruments. Of course, this type of collaboration would continue and even strengthen with their wonderful album, Venus and Mars. And as far as I'm concerned, Venus and Mars is as good as Band on the Run any day. I'll give Band on the Run a nudge, mainly because it said it all first. But with Venus and Mars, we see Denny really coming to the fore as a co-writer with Paul. Now, of course, Denny had a career before he ever met Paul. He wasn't just some studio musician that Paul had met along the way and said, hey, join my band, which he was known to do occasionally, right? No. Denny was the lead singer for the Moody Blues, and he's the singer on the song Go Now that you've always listened to. Now, for me, that's kind of strange because I remember hearing Go Now when I was just a little kid, and I loved it. It was my favorite song for about 2 or 3 weeks in a row. And I didn't know who sang that. I didn't even know it was the Moody Blues. I just loved the song on the radio. That's interesting because that was his in to Wings. Linda McCartney, like me, loved that song. And when Paul suggested Denny, she said, oh yeah, and I really love that song by him. Now, why was Paul even suggesting Denny? Well, him and the Beatles had toured together, and Paul had struck up, well, a sort of lifelong friendship with the guy, as Paul generally tended to do. When he found somebody in the industry that he really liked, a friendship usually ensued. And so we saw the very basic makeup of Wings right from the outset once Denny Laine was on board. Denny was responsible for not just holding the band in line, but giving the band Paul's direction, making sure that they were all in a cohesive form. Now, it's been decades since Wings was a thing, right? But back then, you've got to understand, their younger fans didn't even care that Paul McCartney was from the Beatles. Live, Denny could sing lead, he could play guitar, lead guitar, bass guitar, even keyboards. And this was great for Paul because once Paul settled down to the keyboards live, it was usually Denny who took over the bass parts. As a matter of fact, on my thumbnail, Denny is playing a bass guitar, isn't he? You know, every great band needs either a guy or a gal just like this. There's no doubt about it. Wings was an extension of Paul McCartney, and Paul McCartney was an extension of the Beatles. And it was Paul who made that band what it was, but he couldn't have been anywhere near as successful as he was without Denny Laine. I love Denny's solo album. What was it called? Holidays? Anyway, the album really just had Denny singing lead on old Buddy Holly songs, with Paul McCartney supplying every damn instrument, but they put it out as a Denny Laine solo album. Of course, Paul McCartney benefited because he had just recently bought all of Buddy Holly's songs. That's right, McCartney owns the Buddy Holly catalog. But whether it was his input on Spirits of Ancient Egypt, a song I absolutely love, all the way to really Mull of Kintyre. You know, everybody says that's one of Paul McCartney's greatest songs. He co-wrote it with Denny Laine, McCartney supplying the Mull of Kintyre portion of the song, with Denny supplying the bulk of the song. In other words, the portion where Paul sings, "Far have I traveled." You know, this man was nobody's second banana, and absolutely essential to the success of Wings. Now, Paul and Denny had a falling out right around the time that Paul wound up in prison in Japan. And I guess Denny had made a couple of retorts regarding McCartney in an interview. And of course, he had something coming up as far as a solo project, and McCartney felt betrayed. But McCartney has just made statements that him and Denny had kind of sewed up their differences and were on a speaking basis and just kept the conversation to the good old days. I had always wished that Denny had been in his touring band these days. He was the logical guy to play in that band, but I think Paul was trying to get away from the Wings image. You know, even in his concerts today, less and less Wings material and more Beatles material are played at his concerts. All right, folks, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. That helps with the YouTube algorithm. It promotes channel growth and all of that. But I had to get this video out. You know, I was talking to Bruce over at B-Sides, all right? He did an excellent video for Denny yesterday, and then he got a hold of me and asked me if I was gonna be doing one on my channel. And I told him, well, by the time I get to it, it'll be secondhand news at best. But it doesn't matter. This video is not for the views so much as one of the legends of rock and roll that I absolutely was a fan of has passed away. All right, folks, I'm Michael Noland. This is The Bottom Line, and in the comments especially, we, you and I, are the tribe.